All right, the news is broken. Everyone's seen it. The commission lawsuit is going to change real estate forever. Sellers are going to save tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. Buyers are going to see prices crash, and real estate agents are going to exit the business. This is amazing for everybody. And I just want to maybe give you a little bit of objective to what I've seen in the news, in reality, and what's really going to happen. I want to share that with you now. And this is based off of 37 years in the business, over $2 billion in sales in my career. I've seen a lot of homes trade, a lot of buyers go through certain experiences and sellers go through certain experiences. I've seen a lot of people make some money, a lot of people lose money. Was it 40 years of doing this now? I think we're pushing. I've seen a lot. And so this is from that perspective of understanding how this is going to impact buyers and how it's going to impact sellers and how it's going to impact the real estate community. What you're about to watch is a behind the scenes footage of explaining to my team the ramifications of this massive commission lawsuit that's just happened and is about to get put in front of the Department of Justice, and how it's going to impact sellers and how they're going to save hundreds of thousands of dollars in our marketplace. Buyers are going to see prices crash, and we're going to see a mass exodus in real estate. And most importantly, get this, the last 4 years of sellers are going to get a windfall. And I did the math exactly how much you're likely to receive from this massive lawsuit. You're going to love it. You will not believe it. You know, there is a lot of sensationalism about what is going on with this commission lawsuit. And I think it's important to understand and how to separate what the news is saying and what is really happening. You know, I liken it to living in Southern California, and they say the big storm is coming and it drizzles out on the sidewalks and you might see some water out there, and that's the big storm, right? So it can get sensationalized. There is going to be an impact on the real estate industry, no question. This lawsuit, should it follow through with the Department of Justice and they finalize this and start these rules in July, you will see an impact. But I want to share what my perspective is on that with you so you have a better understanding what the impact is, not only to your clients, your sellers, and your buyers, but the real estate industry as a whole, because it will have an impact at some level. It's just probably a little bit softer than what you're seeing in the news, because you know how the news works. They want people watching the news. They want people buying their papers. Do people still buy papers? The results of the lawsuit are a change in how the real estate is going to work, and that has happened. But for those that were excited about getting a big refund check for this lawsuit because you sold a home in the last 4 years, you better sit down for this one. Here's what really is going to happen based on, I just did some quick math because it's easy to do the math. So even though it sounds massive, let's just take a step back to see what really is going to happen for buyers, for sellers, for you if you sold your home in the last 4 years, for real estate agents. Will you see a reduction in commissions overall? I think because it's so present and talked about, and that, you know, it's more loud that commissions are negotiable. I think sellers will fight a little bit harder, buyers will fight a little bit harder. It could be some savings. Do we think it's going to be a significant impact on pricing? No, I think supply and demand is what drives pricing. This will not drive prices. First of all, the first thing that I noticed was the Today Show. My wife loves the Today Show, and there's this lady that gets on, and she's so great, right? She really breaks down what is happening very succinctly and helps you understand. I couldn't get over the contradictions in some of the things she was saying. For example,
the National Association of Realtors, which represents 1.5 million agents across the country, agreed to settle a series of class action lawsuits that were filed by homeowners in Illinois and Missouri that claimed that real estate commissions violate antitrust laws, that basically they're artificially inflating these commissions. You want to sell your house, you get a listing agent, and they're going to get 5 to 6% commission on the sale of your house. It's not typically anything you can actually negotiate. There's no real competition. Then that house sells, they split the commission with the buyer's agent. Well, now that is eliminated under this ruling if it is approved by a federal court. That still has to happen. In the interim, we have March, April, May, June. It's going to be business as usual. But if you're thinking about selling your house later than July, and let's say this goes through and it's approved by the courts, you're going to want to negotiate with the selling agent to understand what is your commission? What are you providing for me? How are you going to get my home in front of as many buyers as possible and get me the most bang for my buck? And this could be the 3% commission now instead of a 6% commission. The median price for a home right now is $417,000 in the U.S. That's a $25,000 commission typically under the old rules. Under the new rules, it'd be $12,500. So you could save tens of thousands of dollars. And a lot of homes in busy markets, I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars that you could save.
So the first thing I saw was contradictions in the video. You know, as an agent, the funniest thing I read there or heard there was, she said, there's no competition in the marketplace, and now there is. And then she says there's 1.5 million realtors in the marketplace. Now, you all know every time you go on an appointment, you're dealing with competition. You're competing against 1.5 million realtors. And in reality, you're only in California, so you're dealing with hundreds of thousands of competing people. So the fact that competition has been created is really, I don't know how I say it's false, but the competition existed. The reality is with this new law, should it be passed, if we call it a law, we will see a reduction in the amount of real estate agents in the marketplace, and therefore we're going to see less competition. Now, we may see new companies and new business models and paid by the hour, paid by the fee come into the marketplace, and so you will see competitive models come out, but it's not like that's never happened before. In my career, I've gone up against for sale by owners, which pay no commissions. I've gone up against Purple Bricks that came in from the UK, a discount company to help homeowners and home buyers use the real estate services less expensive. Catalyst was a big company in our local South Bay marketplace that did everything at half price. It was 3% model. So these companies have been around for decades and always have been there, and they will always remain, and we're going to see new ones pop up. So is there no competition and now we have competition? No, it's really exactly the same. Here was my perspective. The frustration, we'll call it, to cause the lawsuit was that sellers were paying two commissions. They were paying a listing agent and they're paying a buyer's agent. So they're paying two agents. And therefore, they're like, why am I paying an agent to negotiate against me? I want to hire an agent that's to negotiate for me. Why would I be forced to pay someone to negotiate against me? And that was the fight, right? Now, forget what my opinion is for a second. That was what the lawsuit was about, ultimately. And these sellers saying, listen, can I just pay my share and let the other half get figured out somewhere else? Why are you forcing me to do that? And there were rules from the NAR that said, hey, you've got to offer compensation in the MLS. Now, I don't believe there was any rule saying how much you had to offer. You could offer $1. I think it just said you couldn't offer 0 cents, but you had to put something in there. You had the right to put $1, and you had the right to put 2.5%, 3%. And to be honest with you, if you think back to foreclosure days, Home Savings of America, which I don't think's around anymore, would offer 6% to agents to motivate them to bring their buyers. They get paid twice as much in a really bad real estate market. And as the market got hot, you saw negotiations take place and commissions come down and offering less to buyer's agents. But the whole idea was, don't force me to pay a buyer's agent, and let's not put it in the MLS and let agents decide which homes are going to show based on how much they're going to get paid. Do I think that's good for the marketplace? Absolutely, right? Anytime you're creating competitiveness and transparency, absolutely fine. I think change is always good. I think it's going to create some transparency in the marketplace, awareness for the consumer to think about who they're hiring and what they're worth. And that's a good thing. But the lawsuit was about separating those two commissions. And so here's the funny take. When the news talks about it, they're not talking about this piece over here. They're only talking about this piece right here, saying commissions are now going to be half. Instead of 6%, they're 3%. Instead of 5%, they're 2.5%. and everybody's going to save money. But that's not what happened. They're just saying, don't make this one guy pay for it all. Put some over on this guy's. Make the buyer pay some of that. That's what really happened with this, and I think the rules are going to be put in place that buyers need to go fend for themselves and not count on the seller to pay that. So here's the impact on sellers. Initially, I think when this falls into place, there's going to be a lot of discussions taking place between the Department of Justice, the National Association of Realtors, the lawyers, and everybody else, and it's all going to get hashed out. But ultimately, it will likely go through, and sellers will now be comfortable hiring listing brokers at half price and saying, I don't want to pay a commission to the buyer's agent. And therefore, instead of paying 6%, they'll pay 3%. Instead of 5%, they'll pay 2.5%. Whatever it is they negotiate. And they got to pick an agent that they feel can get the job done. That hasn't changed. They always had the right to pick an agent who they felt was going to be good for them, who's going to represent them correctly, market their home properly, get it exposed, negotiate on their behalf. All that's the same. They're just kind of focused on half of that commission. Now comes the question for them. They have another choice. Do I offer motivation to the buyer's agents out there that are running around with buyers to bring them over to my house? Or do I just put all that expectation upon my listing agent to go do that job, to go find a buyer? I think sellers are going to have an interesting choice there, because they can choose to motivate the entire marketplace and still offer compensation. Say, come over to my house, bring your buyers over here to get all the money, and we'll pay a lot of money, and I'll take care of you, don't worry about it. Right? They'll have that choice. And then there's going to be sellers say, I'm not paying you. Right? So that's where my question comes in. As a seller, were you paying an agent representing the buyer to negotiate against you, or were you paying them to get in your car and bring a great buyer over here who has all the money, right? There are really great buyers who drive around with really average to poor agents. And it's just because of relationships. Their brother got a license, they were referred into this guy, and maybe they've only sold one home, but they like him, they get along with them, and they're going to buy. But they're not really that good, but they're a good buyer. You may have to lasso them to come over. They're not paying attention to the marketplace. They're not looking where they need to look. They don't even, know what the heck they're doing. So you got to tease them with a little bit of compensation to come on over. That's just a fact. So are you really, as a seller, paying someone to negotiate against you? Are you paying someone to motivate them to bring a great buyer over? I'm just going to leave that out as a question. I think some would argue one way, some would argue the other, and it's a fair argument to have. What's this $418 million going to do, right? These lawyers did a great job. They likely won this case. They're likely going to have class action national lawsuit win somewhere in the $418 million range. And there's still pending lawsuits out there that could increase the amount of money that comes into the bucket that would get distributed to home sellers who've sold their home in the last 4 years. They're saying they'll pay back 4 years. I did the math on this. For those that sold their home in the last 4 years and you're anticipating this huge windfall, it's going to be exciting. You're going to love this. So here it is. If we look back at how many homes were sold over the last 4 years, last year was our worst year in a long, long time. We sold 4 million homes last year. In 2022, it was 5 million homes. 2021, probably one of the biggest years ever, close to 6 million homes were sold. And then go back another year, is back closer to 5.5 million homes. So basically 20,500,000 homes sold in the last 4 years. I don't know the facts of this case and how lawyers get paid. I just Googled it and it said in a class action lawsuit, lawyers get to keep 25 to 35% of the money that they win in a class action lawsuit. So that's about a third. So if they take $418 million, the lawyers get a third of that, 100 and some odd million dollars for fighting it and impacting the world for the real estate community. So good job, lawyers. they're going to have a nice payday. What's left for the consumers is about $200 and some odd million, $210 million left for them to split up for the 20 million people. And I did the math on it, and it came down to $13.85 that these home sellers will get back if this $418 million is the suit, if every single one that gets a letter in the mail asks for their claim. Because you get these letters in the mail all the time about these class action lawsuits. You want to be a part of it. If everybody says yes, you'll get $13 back if they split it evenly. It's not an impact that's going to significantly benefit anyone that sold their home in the last 4 years. It's really not going to have a financial effect. They definitely could go to Starbucks and get 2 cups of coffee, though. What the lawsuit has accomplished effectively, should this go through, is how the real estate business is going to be done. It will have an impact. It's going to have an impact on sellers, and what they're going to pay out is going to have an impact on buyers. Let's talk about buyers. Headline, real estate is on sale. We're going to see prices crash. Good news for buyers, right? I'm telling you, homeowners hate to hear those words, though. Homeowners don't ever want to hear their home prices are going down. So if you own a home, ignore the news, don't watch it. If you're a buyer, listen, and here's what's going to happen, in my opinion. As it relates to the lawsuit, what's going to happen ultimately, paying for your real estate services is going to become an expense to you. And you'll have the right to hire a low budget, flat rate fee agent if they exist. They'll probably pop up and go hire Joe who just got his real estate license yesterday for, $3,000 or whatever it is. Or you're going to hire the elite real estate guy who's been in the business for 3 or 4 decades and can get you to the finish line and probably save you a lot of money, and you're going to pay a 3% commission, right? And everywhere in between. I even heard talk that maybe commissions could go up for some agents because they're that good and they can demand a higher rate. I don't know what's going to happen, but you're going to see really low price people and you're going to see higher price people. The problem for home buyers is that's an added cost to purchase the home. And my biggest concern, honestly, are for your first-time home buyers that are buying in what we call the FHA marketplace. The FHA marketplace is where the average price home is, where you can go out and still buy with 3.5% down payment. Our buyers that are buying with 3.5% down typically have saved just that much to buy their first home. And they're probably in an average price home market in the United States of America of $300,000 or $400,000. So let's call it $300,000. 3.5% is about $10,000. They save 10 grand. They go out shopping for a home and they decide they have to hire a realtor, and let's say that realtor is going to charge 3%. Now they need 6%. It could really hurt their chances of buying a home. So we've got to figure this out for them. We really do. We can't put the onus upon the buyer, and this lawsuit is kind of doing that. And I'm sure we're going to find a way to save these consumers that can only buy with 3% down. And here's how I think we can save them. Number one, go back to the seller and say, please, would you allow the commissions to be paid through the purchase price of the home? Can I raise the price of the home to compensate the realtor I'm hiring so I can buy the home because I don't have the cash to pay those guys? Or they're going to go to the lender and say, hey, can I borrow this for the purchase? Now that's going to look like 100% financing if you do the math on it. Our veterans have the right to buy with no money down. The whole reason they designed that program is to allow veterans to have home ownership. This is what the NAR is, the enemy, right, that they fought for, was out fighting for veterans' rights, right, to be able to buy a home with no down payment. They've eliminated that process with this lawsuit. We've got to figure this out, and I'm sure it's going to get figured out, but it is a problem that's just been created by putting costs on home buyers. So that's my biggest concern and the impact on buyers. Yes, prices could come down a few percent, but their costs go up a few percent. So where are we? We really just balance out. If there's a reduction in overall commissions paid, okay, so maybe we see a drop of 1% or 50%, whatever people are saying in the news, and the cost of buying and selling a home because of real estate agency. Let's say that comes down. It's not what drives value. It's not what drives home prices. In reality, what drives home prices, and I'm going to ask you to look up one name who I think is a genius at explaining values in real estate. His name is Barry Habib, the foremost expert I've seen talk on this subject. If you have the time, Google his name, go on YouTube, wherever you want to go, and watch what he talks about supply and demand. How the age group of 20-something-year-olds drive housing demand because they are the ones that create the need for first-time homes. And the demand for first-time home buyers has increased dramatically because of this age group that's here. It's population that's creating it, and housing starts are way down. Supply and demand is what's going to drive prices. Commissions are not going to drive prices. And as long as we have this massive group of population needing homes and housing starts down, we're going to have a challenge with inventory in this marketplace. And when we don't have the supply of homes to meet the demand, it's going to have upward pressure on prices. We've had upward pressure on prices during an increasing interest rate market. Just imagine when interest rates go down in the next 12 to 24 months, what that's going to do to the marketplace. This commission thing will have almost non-felt, I don't even know what the word is, effect on prices. It's going to be supply and demand. 100% is going to affect you. Yes. The problem with the real estate industry is the bar to get into the business is so low. The sensationalism of these TV shows of agents making hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars by driving their Rolls Royce around Beverly Hills or New York City draws a lot of people into the business. To get that license is not very difficult. This is not taking a bar exam. This isn't going to medical school for 12 years. It's taking an online course and passing a test. Most people can pass that test. And actually, the test has nothing to do with real live doing real estate business. It has to do with law and everything else, which is great, but doesn't teach you how to become a great salesperson, negotiator, how to solve problems. That's not what it teaches you. It takes years in the business to figure that out, if not decades, to figure that out. So what's going to happen is you're going to see a massive exodus in the real estate community because they don't have the skills to explain their value and what they provide to clients. And they probably don't have the skills that these consumers, you as a home buyer, you as a home seller, need and expect when you have a real estate agent. You have two marketplaces where you really notice it, right? You have the hot marketplace where there's no inventory, there's buyer frenzy, and you're trying to get your offer accepted. I give you an example. Last week, I just got an offer accepted with 8 offers on the property. So for hundreds of thousands of dollars over the market, over the asking price. I got that deal accepted through skill, strategy, 25-year relationship with the previous agent who I knew, and everything else I needed to try to get that offer accepted. Was my buyer willing to pay a lot of money over the asking price to get it? They were. So yes, that was an impact. But to be able to get it accepted was critical because what just happened for that buyer is that set the new bar for prices in that neighborhood. The next home it's going to sell here or here. And yes, they paid way more than the comps in that neighborhood. Didn't feel great. But it does feel good tomorrow when the next home sells down the street for a lot more money and they finally locked in prices because they're still going to go up. So buyers need that in that kind of market. And then when the market's crashing, you need to know how to negotiate the right price in a declining market. We don't see those very often, but it does happen. We are moving real estate commissions from the seller's responsibility to the buyers. Is this big news? Do you know the oldest selling process in America is? It's the auction process. I used to own a real estate auction company, a very successful luxury real estate auction company. In auctions, buyers pay 100% of the commission. Art auctions, car auctions, and luxury real estate auctions. When you buy a home, they add what's called a buyer's premium. You buy a collector car, they add a buyer's premium, 10 to 15% over the top of that price. I want to stick in real estate, and there's so many experts in cars and art, and I don't want to go in an area I'm not an expert in. I am an expert in real estate. Let's take a $3 million home. Goes up for auction for whatever the reason is. Why do homes go up for auction? It's not always distress. It's just the method a seller might choose to sell a home because they think it's going to get a lot of exposure and maybe it sells for what it needs to sell for. But if you're a buyer, put your buyer's shoes on, and you think the home's worth $3 million, and you know you have to pay a 10% buyer's premium on top of your price, how much are you going to bid on a home? How much are you willing to go up to? Now, the bidding starts at $1 million. Sounds great. Hoo, hoo, hoo. But it gets up to $2 million, $2.5 million. Back of your head, oh, shoot, I got to pay 10% on top of that. Gets up to $2.7 million. That's about 300 grand. 2.7, 300, that's 3 million. I can't go over 2.7. Now that's what the seller's going to get, right? They stop at 2.7. I'm paying 3 million plus 10%, that's 3.3. So when you put the commission on the buyer's side, they have to pay less. There's going to be balance in the marketplace. This has been around for hundreds of years. I want to close with this. As you watch the news and hear the sensationalism, just take a step back and think of a dual perspective. Now, I know the world thinks that maybe real estate agents make too much money and it's fine and you can support that. And I listen, I support it too. Totally fine. But listen to, are we talking about, is it protecting sellers? Is it protecting buyers? Because that's really all that matters. We don't care about the group that's making the money in between. But we do care, is it protecting sellers or is it protecting buyers? And everything I've seen so far is it has a balance effect. And I'm not seeing a massive benefit to one side and not a massive benefit to the other side. It's a balance. Sellers are going to pay less. It's going to get moved over to the buyer's side. Buyers are going to have to pay some more closing costs, but they might get a reduced sales price. So there's just really a true balance. But really what's coming out of this, and I think which is great, is transparency. Transparency for the consumers, for the sellers. Hey, you better hire the right person to represent you and go do the job. Buyers, you better hire the right person to represent you. And all this is going to be negotiable and a little bit more obvious to both parties. And if you're a real estate agent, you better get good or you better look for another career. And so if the goal of the lawsuit was to reduce the amount of realtors in the marketplace, and that's going to save consumers money, it's the other balance to this. We're going to take out, what, 1.5 million realtors? Let's say we take out half, 750,000. That's going to take 750,000 people and put them in the unemployment line, which is going to create unemployment. What the hell is that going to do to the market? We need a pro economist to really figure out what's really going to happen overall, because removing that many people from the workforce and putting in an unemployment line can have an impact as well. I'm not that smart to figure out what the real impact is. I just don't think it's going to be as big as the news is saying.